Hello and welcome to Property Matters, a weekly look at all matters property designed to be of interest to anyone who has an interest in the world of property. Property Matters, of course, is supported by Fairview International Property Consultancy and Town & Country Property Auctions London. Each week we look for those big stories that will get you talking, so please place your comments in the comments section below wherever you're watching us today. And don't forget to subscribe so you get notifications of when we go live, which won't always be just on a Sunday. And we'll tell you more about that in just a moment. Also, if you'd like to get in touch, the email address is propertymatterstv@gmail.com. So joining us as always, our property expert, Joe Joshi. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning, Paul. Good morning to all our viewers. Of course, on this Sunday, Remembrance Day Sunday, obviously our hearts and thoughts go out to all those that lost their lives for us. We are where we are today, thanks to those people that did the work for us in the world wars. Of course, it's a good Sunday to remember all those, even though during the week there was that couple of minutes of silence. But Property Matters will persist and go on, thanks to all those people.
Indeed, and we should be finished before 11 o'clock today anyway, in that case. And so to a busy week for us, because we have the Asian Jewish Business Network tomorrow. It's at the Lord's Cricket Ground tomorrow, St John's Wood Road in London, NW8, and we're there from 10 until 3. With around 500 other professional people, a lot of them from the world of property. And we'll be bringing our Property Matters show live from there, fingers crossed, tomorrow from midday.
That's an exciting opportunity, really, for all the businesses, especially those in property. And thanks to Russell and his team, who actually were successful in winning the accolade from Signature Awards this last week. So congratulations to Russell for doing a sterling job on making sure that a business network such as Asian Jewish Business Network has been created and has become a success story. There are, as you rightly say, going to be a lot of people from the world of property there, Paul, and also from the world of finance. To be perfectly honest with you, anything that is related to property, which of course, as you know, I will profess to say that pretty much everything we touch and do and see is related at some stage, but fundamentally it is designed at property and finance and lawyers and legals and things, all the sort of things that we cover week in, week out on our show and in relation to property and property matters. It's a great opportunity for us, and of course we are there live, as you say, fingers crossed, all being well, with Property Matters, but also as Town & Country Property Auctions, we have our own stand there, and also Solaria Architects are joining us. A number of our guests are coming along for the day, and of course, what better place than Lord's Cricket Ground? I mean, you know, it is a landmark location for a landmark event, and looking forward to it.
Yes, it's certainly going to be very exciting, and we're going to be grabbing some of those property professionals and having a chat with them about property-related matters on the live show tomorrow, Monday. So looking forward to that very much indeed. And so let's move on to our second story of the week, which is the strongest buyers and sellers markets in the UK. So this has been unveiled for the autumn, Joe. Grays in Essex is the strongest seller market out there at the moment, with 8 out of 10 properties being advertised as SSTC or sold subject to contract, which of course is good news for the agents in the area. And coastal areas continue to remain popular, such as Gosport, Hythe, Bognor Regis, because they're actually the coastal resorts with the best value for money currently, as people still seem to be tempted moving to a new life. So if we just have a quick look at some figures here, and then we can discuss. So Grays, there it is, 84% look of the homes being advertised at the moment are SSTC, which means just 16% of the properties are available. And the average asking price there is 345,415, which is up 7% on the year. Then you've got Mangotsfield, similarly up 12%. Eastleigh in Hampshire, 83% sold, up 7%, 365,000 just over there. Redditch, Yeovil, Hythe, Gosport, Corby, Fareham and Bognor Regis. So interesting to see that it's the value end of the market that seems to be keeping people interested rather than the higher end, as we'll see in a minute. Some of those million plus properties just don't seem to be shifting as quickly as the lower end of the market, which is interesting.
Yeah, it's a follow-up, really, Paul, from the stamp duty holiday that was given out, and of course the pandemic. And I think that sort of drive is still there for the race for space, as we called it. People moving out, as you can see from your stats there, the majority of those are coastal. I mean, nothing personal, but Grays to be at the top of the list was an area that nobody would ever be seen pretty much walking in, let alone dead in 10, 15 years ago, maybe even longer. But obviously, it has now become a area that has changed, and it's changed primarily because people find that they've got more value for money, a lot more property for the amount of money that they got, and obviously connections, both rail and road connections, make it a lot easier for people to actually go out there and travel. So these coastal areas are by far the popular. Of course, the other thing there you see is the value, and the reason why the sort of the bottom end value is there is I think there's another hidden agenda, another story behind that, really, which either the statistics haven't pointed out or haven't come in. This is my opinion. Again, so I'm not going to sort of say that I'm the right guy who brings the stats here, but I think a lot of people have decided that, they've had their 20, 25-year mortgages, which have come to an end. They can sell those for more money and end up buying in areas that you point out 9 times out of 10 because they are retirement areas and more space, but more than anything else, they're better value. So they can actually almost buy a cash purchase and not have a mortgage from the sale of properties that they may have sold in the main towns where they might have worked, etc. So that's quite an important thing you got to take on board, especially when you got people that have had 20, 25-year mortgages on interest only, that have actually now decided that the only way that they can actually get out of that situation is to sell up and buy cheaper, but perhaps a little bit outside, and actually be mortgage free. The interesting thing would be how many of those properties that you're looking at in numbers are actually mortgaged. That would be the real stats to look at, and I think you'll be quite surprised that the mortgage amount is actually lesser, and there have been cash purchases out of the proceeds of the sale of properties perhaps in another area, which is why you'll see, as you rightly say, in further stats, that the bigger end have slightly suffered because not everybody wants to buy those, but there are certainly more that are selling those, or selling in areas that have sort of £500,000, 600,000. So basically, they clear off the mortgage and buy another property. I mean, that's my view. I think that's fundamentally the driver, and that's an underlying driver, because right now, it's not about the stamp duty. It's not about any other structure. It can only be that this is a window of opportunity on a personal basis for somebody to say, well, actually, I don't need to be here, especially in recent times. I can actually move further out, get more space, a bigger house perhaps, and pay it off, and not have to worry about a mortgage for the rest of my life.
At the other end of the market, Joe, flats over £1 million are only 14% SSTC, which is interesting. And the available stock remains at a historic low of about 15 properties per agent across the UK. And there are encouraging signs that the next few months might to see a bit more stock being replenished. Agents are reporting that people coming out and asking for a valuation has jumped 14% year on year in October, which is interesting. So because there's a lot of talk about prices being so buoyant this year, a lot of people say, I can't quite like to know just how much my property is now worth. So there's lots of people coming out saying, come and have a value of my property for me. Let me know what you think it's worth. Whether that'll, of course, translate into instructions is a different matter, I guess.
And the combination of potential interest rate rises, even though the Bank of England actually held that back, there is still that sort of, in the back of your head now situation where at the moment, let's say you have a variable mortgage of, I don't know, a couple of £100,000, and you're probably paying, 100, 150,000, 100, 150 pounds a month. Well, that may go up to £200 a month, and it may be the beginning of an escalation. So again, that's why the market is still buoyant, because people are still thinking, well, actually, this might be my window of opportunity to cash in at the maximum level, because house prices are still buoyant, and I can move out perhaps to outer areas and get better value for my money, and of course not have that burden of mortgage going forward. And of course, if you look at the numbers that you're looking at there at the moment, Birmingham Centre, Maida Vale, Victoria, all of those areas are city centres, they're locations, and that's the next generation of buyers. They're the younger generation, the millenniums, as you would call them, and so they're the new buyers who are perhaps not totally there yet, in the sense that going through the pandemic and coming through the other end. Obviously, furlough went off. It's now, you've got to hold your own. You've got to have the right income in order to qualify for the mortgage. So that market is probably a little bit slower, whereas the cash market is much, much stronger. And I think and that's just, like I said, I don't think there's a sort of an analysis on that, but as a man in the front and the know, those are the general discussions that I tend to hear from people that, because there has been no mechanism, Paul, for some years for people to actually turn around and say, how can I clear my mortgage? So either they've got to extend their term, or they've got to take a view and say, well, I'll cut and run, and let somebody else do it. So,
well, this is the top buyers market we're seeing here now. So Birmingham city centre, only 21% of homes are sold subject to contract. So that means almost 80% are available. 215,000, which does seem low for a city centre, I have to say, is the average asking price. And the average price growth is down 3% year on year. So that's quite interesting. People moving out of Birmingham for the coast and other places, I guess. Finsbury at 19%, down 1% over the year. Maida Vale, Liverpool city centre, which has had quite a lot of price rise over the last year, but seems to be down, not working at the moment. Kensington, Stockwell, Victoria, Bayswater, Aberdeen and Chelsea. So those are the top buyers markets. And then lastly, the markets by price bands. So here we are. This is the thing, and the suggestion is here that it's the end of the tapering of the SDLT holiday that allowed the focus on this. So people were thinking, oh, I can still get a property without any stamp duty. Let's have a look at under 250. And of course, that's meant that there's been a lot of focus on that market. And there was a lot of stock available, one presumes, because 79% of those homes are now SSTC. And just 21% available. So you can see, if you go to the other end, £1 million plus, it's 14%, and 86% are available. So the focus is very much on the value for money end of the market.
Yes, and I mean, the sold subject to contract and the stamp duty holiday, that was allowing people to sort of think that they needed to go up to £250,000. Actually has been slightly outweighed by the value of the home that has increased. So, even though they might have saved themselves 2,500 or 1% or £5,000, the value of that actual home is gone way above what the savings would have been on stamp duty. So people haven't actually waited, though that has been a driver and sort of motivated people to say, okay, well, look, at the bottom end, we've got to go and buy and invest. And again, because the communication made simpler and easier, and perhaps working from home still being high on the agenda now, more so than ever. I mean, I've spoken to many people recently who you just don't feel they need to go in maybe once a week, twice a week into their office, and the rest of it is all being done from wherever they are. So there's a huge drive as to how people are sort of planning their lives and how they're working. And that, of course, is having a reflection in house prices, because at the end of the day, if they can get good value, good space, and easy communication, then that's what they're going to go for.
So our next story, Joe, concerns the property transaction itself, and many experts are calling for the whole process to be speeded up. We did, if you remember, cover off in the heyday of the SDLT holiday that it was taking up to 17, 18 weeks to sort out a property transaction. And the suggestion here is that actually the private treaty could actually be improved if there was a lot of upfront information to speed up the whole process. Because at the moment, you instruct somebody as your solicitor and the conveyancing starts, but then everybody starts asking everybody questions. If that information was available right from the start, then surely that would speed up the situation.
Yeah, Paul, it's an age-old problem. This particular part about conveyancing it goes back since time, and we've been trying to sort it out so many times. But unfortunately, it's all about costs at the end of the day. So it's the fact that people don't want to pay the money up front, and subsequently, actually, they end up paying a lot more in the latter part of the process if they don't deal with it up front. But it's always about, I don't want to pay for something now because it's not sold. So in the private treaty, majority of the properties which are sold through private treaty, the process is that you put it on the market, a buyer comes along, you agree a price, the memorandums are gone out, and the journey begins where the solicitors start to write to each other and hopefully start opening a file, getting all the IDs covered, money launderer, etc., and then onto the actual conveyance. And during that conveyancing time, there is that journey about going to the local council, getting the local searches, etc., done, and so forth. And all of those things cost money. So people don't want to actually pay for those upfront if they can help it. They have to pay some of those disbursements, especially that, but they don't want to pay the legal fees, just as they don't want to pay the state agency fees up front, because obviously it's based on a no sell, no fee. So this whole process is about free. And the problem with free is that sooner or later you're going to have to pay for it. What you pay for is in the number of fall throughs that might happen during that journey. And they may have happened because you weren't able to provide the information to the buyer swiftly and promptly, and they changed their mind and found something else to go to. Actually, this already exists very well in auction, as you know. Through the method of auction, we provide a legal pack up front with all the information so that a buyer can make an informed decision. Yes, there are maybe some questions that are raised, but because the window is a limited window, maybe 4, 5, 6 weeks as a time plan, they actually do a lot more and a lot quicker to try and get those things. It's just that the process allows that. Now, they tried this, Paul, some years back, under a called the Property Pack, the Property Information Pack.
Remember it, yeah.
That was called, and no one ever looked at that. We spent a lot of money on it, and really it was just another stealth tax, just as EPCs are at the moment, though they are taking a different journey now because of the eco-ness of what's going on. But the reality is that they did the Property Information Pack, provided everything that they wanted, and I can honestly tell you there wasn't a man who walked through my door who turned around and said, actually, can I have a look at the Property Information Pack because it's got everything I want. The education wasn't there, the system wasn't there, and they didn't want to pay for that service. And that is fundamentally the issue. And unfortunately, for my learned colleagues as estate agents, they sell themselves so cheap by doing this because everybody undercuts each other by saying, oh, we can do this for less, we can do it for free, we would do that. But actually, they end up paying a lot because they spend a lot of money on advertising, marketing a property, getting through a process. It doesn't sell, then you start again, the same process, and you might do that 2-3 times in some cases, which is why the fall through rates, can be very, very high. And so they now come to a point where they're saying we should find a solution. Actually, the solution already exists. All you have to do is provide a legal pack up front and make sure that the seller is happy to pay for that. If you can't get the seller to do that, I don't think that you can actually go through any system anywhere. And the next thing that you will have out of this is you'll have some agent who'll turn around and say, well, actually, we'll pay for it up front. Or there is an indemnity insurance that will cover it so that, if you don't buy and sell, we can claim it on the insurance and so forth. But I just think that people should have a skin in the game. I mean, if you bought a property 30, 40, 50 years ago at, 2,000, 3,000, whatever the cost was, and it's today being sold at three, 400, 500,000 pounds. In the grand scheme, when you're spending £1,000, £1,500, you'd think that somebody would be prepared to put their money into that and say that. But we, as an industry, be it agents or solicitors or conveyancers, say to our customers, we'll do it for nothing. And the more you say we'll do it for nothing, the more the expectation is, and the higher the chance of this actually never going anywhere. Whereas in the auction world, the the seller has to provide a legal pack for which he's going to have to pay. He knows that. And we don't have an issue with it. They're quite happy to do it. I think it's about education. We're not educated, and we're not. Our mindset isn't there, and there's always going to be one. Always, you could do the best job under the sun, and someone will come along and say, actually, we can do that cheaper, and that's what knocks it out. And as soon as somebody says I can do it cheaper or do it for nothing, it knocks the whole system down. And it's the same thing in any supermarket, any business. You think, I can buy that down the road for X, Y, Z. The next supermarket will say we can actually knock 2 pence off of that. And that's the way it is. And that's just the nature of the beast. So I think, yes, it does need simplifying. Yes, it can be done. And yes, I think it already exists. I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel. I think it's already been there.
Yeah, I mean, the average time for completion rose in September to 17.6 weeks because of the volume of work. And that's the other thing, isn't it? You'd think that actually an industry like conveyancing in this way would be actually able to deal with peaks and troughs after all these years of doing the job. But the truth of the matter is that the IT just hasn't really impacted that sector of the market. And what they're talking about here is that a huge bottleneck is created when they get to the stage of the conveyancing, and it just needs to be brought into the modern day age. And you might want to argue that because of the sort of average age of the people doing that kind of work, perhaps they're not that IT literate and therefore open to new technology. Maybe who knows? But the other point they're making is that not only is the system needing upgrading, there is a problem with the system because there's so many people drop out of sales. And the suggestion is that if there was a pack available with, if the buyer had the information before they even went and visited the property, they can make an informed decision about whether they were going to be serious about buying the property. And they suggest that there were many people who went through the process of buying during the stamp duty holiday who probably accepted non-negotiables because they were so far down the line and didn't want to hold up the process of missing their deadline, that they actually accepted things or let things go that they probably wouldn't have done in a normal market.
Yeah, and I firmly believe that at the end of the day, you know what they say, property is only worth what somebody's prepared to pay for it. And in this situation, if somebody really wants something, they will find the money to buy it. If that is in anything that we buy or do or sell. If there's something that you want, or you've likened it, or you've grown emotionally attached to it, and you think this is going to be my home, then another 200, 300, 500 pounds, I don't think in the grand scheme is the thing. I just think that we as professionals in our business are not educating our customers and clients. And part of that is, as you rightly say, the dinosaurs that exist in the system that just don't want the change to happen. And the other part of it is the new young blood that's coming in isn't up to speed. They're still being taught the old way, and change is not going to happen. I mean, I know for a fact that, even at my time in life, we had to make the changes. We had to understand those changes. But there are a lot of people who are just not happy to make the change. I know that. I speak to agents who are just not prepared to. They're okay with the way things are, and they're happy to do the things the way they are. And so, we're not educating our customers really.
I mean, they do claim, don't they? We've seen it said before that it's slow for a reason because we have to get it right. It's important information, and it's a legal transaction, and therefore it does need pondering over. There is that approach, isn't there?
Well, the problem with that pondering over is, yes, I can. 30 years ago, Paul, 40 years ago, I cannot argue with that point at all. it is important. It is the most expensive money that you will ever spend in your life, in your mind. Whether you actually walk into an estate agent or into a bank or a business society with a lawyer with a briefcase full of cash and say, "Here you are, I'm going to buy it." That all of that is, but we are in the 21st century now. Pretty much every document that you want has been actually scanned and available and can be emailed. We know that. We know the things that you can do in a heartbeat when you can change it. It's just that we believe that we're still not ready for it. Now, if you look at the changes that happened in the pandemic, let's just use that as an example. In the last 2 years, look at the industry changes. Look at the names that went off the high street. Look at the names that have appeared. Look at the systems that have turned around. What we're doing here today as Property Matters is a reason of the pandemic, because I would certainly not be looking to present a Property Matters program. I never thought that in my wildest of dreams. But here we are, providing that service, that information, because this is the market that people are now looking at. This is what the next generation are looking at. They want to be able to understand the system. They want to understand what we're doing. And so if we had to make the change, other people would make the change. But there's a huge number of people that won't make the change because they just won't. And until they move on and pass the business to a younger generation who might understand it, I think we'll be just going around in circles. But I tell you what, it's good news for us because we still have a program to talk about these things. And if they changed it too quickly, I'll be out of a job over here. So it's important to make sure that we've got something to discuss. But I think the system actually exists, Paul. I think we know it does after having the time that I've done over the last 5-6 years when we were doing property auctions. We can see that you provide somebody with a legal pack, and within an instant they make a decision. So it's not something that doesn't exist. It perfectly well does exist, just that the private treaty market chooses not to have it exist because it suits them. So somebody will be paid a lot of money to do this. I remember, it just brings me on a very boring yet insignificant subject. I remember working for a large organization, and some clever clog sat there at head office and came up with all these fantastic ways. And of course, they bought the idea. They sold us the whole concept, and we were given a list of, I think it was 20 or 30 things that we would do as that operation, that company. I'm not going to say who it was, but they, we would do in a heartbeat for a client. I looked at that, and they had complaints left, right, and centre, from the top down to bottom. They paid a marketing company and some chap to write all these things down, who did all these things that they were. Someone somewhere got paid handsomely, and then came a flood of complaints because we didn't live up to the client's expectation on the pledges of the things that we'd said we would do. And the first thing I did is go down to WH Smith's and buy a couple of metal rulers and Stanley knife, or whatever they had, and I chopped all those pages out of every magazine, and my complaints level was 0. Because when you set an expectation to somebody, they're definitely going to complain about it. But if you take it out, we didn't. So my bosses were asking me, why is it that your office is not getting complaints? I said, I don't know. I said, we obviously do a job fantastic. But the point I'm trying to make there is that somewhere, someone will be paid a lot of money to design a system that actually doesn't need redesigning because it already exists. So that's the way of the world. Someone will pitch for that business, and some clever clog will come along and say, you know what, I'll tell you what, we'll do an upfront legal pack, and we'll do this and we'll do that, and then we'll charge somebody else for it, or we'll put an insurance policy on it, and that'll be the way forward. We've been through all of those. Every one of those journeys I can tell you about. I've been through them all. They used to do insurance packs for this, insurance packs for that. People never want to. Just touch and feel it. Be real. It is the most important amount of money people ever spend in their life and in their mind. You probably do the same if you sort of buying, I don't know, a Lamborghini or Ferrari. In fact, I was across the road and the guy had a McLaren sitting there, and he said, it's £250,000. It's like a flat. But the only thing is, you can't even lie down in this one. I said, it's got no space for the recliner to happen. So So I think it's just our industry is a fantastic industry. It's the best form of investment people ever do. It's about where they make money. Everybody's wish and want and dream. You can stand on any street corner and ask 10 people, and eight of them will tell you that they'd like to buy their own home. But there are people that are very archaic in this, and long they may live, because as long as they're archaic, then I've got a Property Matters program to continue to do.
It is the nature of every industry, and it's human nature as well, isn't it, to reinvent the wheel every now and again. We feel it necessity, don't we?
Yeah.
So here's an interesting stat that I found the other day for you. We were going to put this into the show the other day, actually, but we ran out of time. But I left this in because it's really worth talking about. The government really does need to introduce measures to boost the SME property developer industry. So the number of SME, so small-time builders who are building property, well, making property developments, building properties, has plummeted by 80% since the late 80s. This is according to real estate debt advisory firm Sirius Property Finance. And SME developers, by the way, are delivering up to 1,000 homes on a annual basis. So that's the criteria. So an SME developer is someone who delivers up to 1,000 homes on an annual basis. So the long and short of it is that we've gone from in 1988, 12,215 SME builders, okay, who delivered 77,500 homes in that year, and now in 2017. 2,500 from 12.5, 2,500 SME builders delivering 335 homes a year. I mean, that's shocking, isn't it? They claim that red tape in particular is a problem, and also, of course, trying to find the land in the first place and getting through all the necessary legalese to actually get to do that. And the return on investment isn't the same as it was many years ago. So, an interesting piece of research.
So you said 2017. I think you meant 2021 as to bring the current
No.
date.
The figures are to 2017.
Right?
Yeah.
So, but let's just take 2017 and go back from 1980 to even current times. The problem why the SME builder has plummeted is red tape, clearly, funding, and 2007, 2008 crash probably didn't help a great deal, because a lot of builders were building things, and when they were not building, they went bust, and when they went bust, banks and building societies were holding the baby. So they then turned around and started saying that unless someone is a qualified builder, someone has the appropriate credentials, we won't lend money. So money became an issue for the SME to go out and borrow. Of course, finding the right plot that gave them the return equally is and has been challenging, though that's probably been a lot easier perhaps in other parts of the country than it has in the southern parts of the country, which is where obviously most of the strengths lie. But other places like Birmingham, Manchester, Liverpool, the big cities have seen a growth there. But our biggest issue on this point, really, Paul, as far as I'm concerned, is that we're not home growing any builders. It is not something that we are telling our children to do. There was a time when it was seen as a good thing to do, but most of them will happily sit on their butt and press keyboards, because that is where our current world lies. To actually, I mean, I personally think that there's a window of opportunity for plumbers and electricians and so forth. You try and find one at the moment, and they're like gold dust, because nobody wants to do that. But it's not as attractive. It's not, it's not seen as a socially fantastic job. But yet those guys earn tremendous amount of money, but they earn it with hard labor, hard work. I mean, crawling around under a sink is not the nicest and most attractive scenario to be. But
no, absolutely,
you try and find someone who's actually prepared to do it. So that SME whole thing has dropped in the demand and the actual, I suppose, the sexiness of wanting to be a builder. Whereas it's probably more attractive to be a computer programmer, or whatever else the current roles are. And that
Yeah.
then is topped by the number of people that are allowed to come into the UK and the growth. So obviously, we've been held by those situations that doesn't allow for the growth. Where people say, "Oh, well, they're coming from abroad; they're not part of the legal system, so forth." Somewhere or another, something's got to give. But the reality of it is, it's not. In my mind, it's just not sexy enough. So that's why we have a huge issue there.
Well, they blame the reasoning for it on red tape, obviously, barriers around finance and planning. As you mentioned, a reduced level of opportunity due to 2 financial crashes during those years, complicated public procurement processes, and of course, growing and fierce competition from the big house builders who just seem to get bigger and bigger. So I guess there's probably fights over property plots, rather, and things like that going on between them as well. So there just isn't the return on investment there, because the amount of money required to actually get the plot in the first place is just making it not tenable for them, perhaps. But most notably, the reason that they've almost become extinct is because of the big house builders really stepping in and muscling in on them. But the fact of the matter is that as a result, the number of new homes built on an annual basis by SMEs has reduced from 40%. So of all the homes built in the UK in 1988, these guys basically built 40% of them. Now in 2017, that was 12%. So it's a huge impact, and of course it's meaning that less homes are being built at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, and the government is constantly saying, all successive governments are constantly saying that they're going to build more homes, but there's just so much red tape around how it's going to happen. Never the twain shall meet. It's just not going to come to that point. And yes, the big guys are getting bigger. And the reason why they're getting bigger and they swallow up the little guys is because it's easier for them to go and contract a job, a builder to go and contract a job for bricklaying or carpentry or plastering to a big company who's building 200-300 homes, and he knows he's got a good job for the next God knows how long without having the headache. Even though he gets up in the morning and he goes, you know what, I'd love to build my own home. I'd love to go and do that. I'd love to find a plot of land. I can't see what, but it makes life easier when you've got the big builders who are sort of saying to you, well, come and work for us, because we're swallowing everything up.
Okay, let's look at a building that's already standing, and it's one that's up for auction in Southend Lane. I'm assuming these are the flats above the garage. Is this correct, Joe?
Yeah, so here we have what we call split level maisonettes, all 3 bedrooms. One is a reverse, in other words, the bedroom accommodation is downstairs, and of course the living accommodation is on the first floor. And the other ones, the living accommodation is on the first floor, and the bedrooms are upstairs. These are low lease, cash purchase only. Southend Lane, in London, you can still buy, and we're guiding these over at £200,000 for a 3-bedroom property. So those that have got the cash and looking for an investment and a good return on investment, you're looking at probably 7-8% return. On something like this. This is a great opportunity, especially if your money is sitting in a bank or a building society and it's not earning you as much money as you potentially could earn here. But again, it goes to show that if you look hard enough and look around, there are properties around that sort of 200 guide price. Of course, the legal pack and everything is online. You can make an informed decision on this straight away, and you can buy this under auction terms and conditions. That you could be owner of this before Christmas. That's how fast the system is through auction. Whereas if you were doing this private treaty, you may be still doing it this time next year for Christmas. So give us a call on that. And I had to have a little dig there, because obviously we know that's important. The documents are available and viewings are available, but £200,000. Make me an offer I can't refuse.
And of course, these days, extending the lease is a lot easier than it used to be.
Yeah, the government has obviously intervened in that, and everybody knows what the rules and the guidance are, and we've allowed for that in the price, in the guide price. make sure that you do. And if you are extended on a lease and it's full lease, of course, this property will be closer to £400,000. So the opportunity is there for an uplift for those that are prepared to take the gamble.
And a nice uplifting way to end the show today, Joe. So, well, we'll be there tomorrow with another show. Of course, just a reminder to everybody, we're going out on the road to do the show tomorrow with the Asian Jewish Business Network at Lord's Cricket Ground. And we're going to be on the air for an hour tomorrow, Monday, the 15th of November, from 12 to 3. Exciting times, Joe.
Look forward to it. And hopefully we'll get some very interesting guests that will come in and appear and join us. And of course, as always, we will continue to add value and, of course, the differences in property matters, which is what it's all about.
Indeed. So if you can join us tomorrow from 12, please do so. But of course, we'll be back next Sunday at our usual time, 10 o'clock every Sunday morning. Thanks for watching.